Hello and welcome to Take Your Time, a Persona 5 Royal in real time podcast where we go through Persona 5 Royal in real time, playing the video game while talking about it on this podcast. That's all I'm going to do for this intro because we have a lot to talk about this week, and also I have two important pieces of housekeeping I didn't tell Tom about before the show started. But hello everyone, my name is Jonathan Dornbush, I'm your host for this week, joined as always by my wonderful co-host Tom Marks.
Hello!
The first piece of housekeeping, Tom. My light's not on. It's because I forgot to charge it overnight, so sorry. I feel bad about that. There we go. Number two, we were doing today's Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle, which is, of course, for September 5th. My girlfriend and I were doing it on the crossword app, as you do. And one of the clues was the first name of the character known with the last name Lupin. And I was like, you know how I know this? Not because of that Netflix show, not because of anything else, but because of Persona. And my girlfriend asked for the answer, and I was like, Arsene, aka Joker's Persona. And then I walked out of the room like it was a really big deal, but it was great. So anyway, Persona 5 can teach you things.
Wait. I have a Persona real-world related partner story as well, because my fiance said that the other day she was driving and listening to the radio, I think NPR or something like that, and they played a transition song, and it was Behind the Mask, on talk radio as like a transition song.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's incredible. Who at NPR is a Persona fan, and how do we get in touch with them? Anyway, NPR, if you want to take on this podcast and make it part of your network, let us know, and we'll be happy to have those strict negotiations. But no, we do have a lot of story and some interesting stuff to talk about this week. Starting off with August 30th through September 5th, we've got a bit of ground to cover. But before we go there, do want to do the rest of our normal housekeeping for the week. And beginning with that, of course, Tom, let's have a pop quiz answer from you.
Alrighty, so last week I asked you, why did Yusuke buy lobsters? An enigmatic question in itself that probably has many philosophical answers, insightful answers beyond the one I was looking for. One person in the YouTube comments, Thomas, did get this question correct, at least in the answer I was looking for specifically. Yusuke kind of comes over and says that he was struck, right? He was struck by their beauty and instantly fell in love and hadn't been struck this way since he first saw On, which is, take that as you will.
Yeah.
But the exact answer I was looking for is later on, Morgana suggests turning them into sushi or sashimi or grilling them or whatever. And Yusuke says that these lobsters are, quote, purely for the sake of visual appreciation. Which I just love.
Does he find those lobsters sexy?
I don't think that's the implication.
No, I know. It's definitely not.
I mean, I think that's also just like the thing about him at any time he talks about any girl or whatever, is it's like he's an appreciation of form.
Yep, for the aesthetics.
In its purest aesthetic sense, yeah.
Yeah, people say do it for the gram. Yusuke says do it for the aesthetics.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, I love that idea of that running bit for him is just everything is about it's like the beauty of it in terms of its form and nature.
There's a conversation you can have. We haven't talked much about the Thieves' Den, but there's a conversation you can actually have in the Thieves' Den. One of the things you can do there is buy like locations, right? Mm-hmm. And like set them up in the den, like you can have LeBlanc in your Thieves' Den or whatever, and then characters will come and talk about it and look at it. You can get the fishing pond, like the place where you go to fish or whatever, and I think there's a conversation between, I think it was Makoto and Futaba, where they are like, hey, whatever happened to those lobsters Yusuke bought? And like they just don't have an answer. Like,
that's so great.
They're just like, yeah, I don't know if he ever kept those or what. We never saw him again.
Oh, man. I always was freaked out at lobsters as a kid. I lived by the beach, and there were a lot of, like, seafood restaurants. And they'd always have that big tank, like, in the area when you walk in to be like, ooh, pick your lobster. And I'm like, no.
Sure.
I I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It's going to try to snap at me. I don't want any of this. But anyway, Yusuke, I'm glad you were able to find appreciation for them in that way. I am speaking to you as if you're real, because you're real in my heart. Anyway, before Tom, thank you for that answer. I genuinely love the pop quiz questions, whether or not I know the answer every week. It's amazing the side stuff that you've been able to pick up on for this playthrough, and I'm glad that you're coming into it with that, having already played, so that you're able to find that stuff.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it too. So hopefully other people are as well.
Yeah, we hope so. Before we get to the event of this week as well, I wanted to read a comment and an email. First, reading the email from Steven. Steven wrote into dornology@gmail.com, like you can if you have any longer thoughts you want to send along the way. Steven said, "Hi, Jonathan and Tom. I discovered Take Your Time last week. It's the fastest I've binged the podcast to get all caught up." Well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to your future weekly Monday episodes to hear your book club-style conversations on the postmodern literary treasure that is Persona 5 Royal. Jonathan, given the fact that you've already played the base Persona 5 game, it probably won't be a spoiler to reveal, and I guess just to, some slight calendar spoiler for base Persona 5, I guess.
And I think this is something we've talked about too.
Exactly. Before. So yeah, in the vaguest of senses. But Steven references how there will be a few weeks in real time where there isn't anything gameplay-wise due to some time jumps. If you continue the podcast through those weeks, it might be fun to hear both of you discuss some aspects of the game that aren't dependent on the calendar, such as the Thieves' Den, some of the overall themes of the story, and of course the incredible soundtrack. And Steven went on to talk a little bit about the soundtrack specifically about Royal, which, of course, I've got the vinyl, and I definitely do want us to talk a little bit more about the soundtrack in detail as we go along. But anyway, I greatly look forward to hearing both of you discuss the soundtrack in a future episode of Take Your Time. Thank you both for your great work thus far on this podcast. I appreciate the thorough, insightful conversations on this wonderful story. Keep up the great work, Steven. And Tom and I talked about this a little bit before the show. Obviously, P5 Royal adds stuff into some of those time jump areas or downtime stuff. So we will have more to talk about. I don't know any of that capacity, so we'll get there when we do.
And also we've got almost a solid 3 or 4 months until we have to start doing that stuff. The bulk of the game does not time jump at all.
Yeah, and so at least from my end, I feel like if we don't get to that stuff in the normal course of discussion throughout these months, I think definitely when there is an extremely down week, we can probably take the time to really dive into one of those things. But I think both of our hopes is that we're going to start to get into the pattern for future palaces of having weeks of downtime. Yeah. And rather than just recounting our downtime, those might be good weeks to jump into something like the Thieves' Den, like the soundtrack, things like that.
Yeah, and then also one of the things we haven't locked any of this in, but one of the things we discussed for the actual weeks off is, maybe we'll just take those weeks off, or maybe we'll use them as an opportunity to discuss something that is not directly about Persona 5 Royal, but about Persona 5 in general. Maybe we'll take a week to talk about the dancing Persona 5 spinoff, right? Or maybe we'll take a week to talk about Strikers, right? There's other sort of adjacent things that we can discuss, and we're still figuring out those plans, but there's lots of different ways we can take it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, if anyone out there has specific thoughts about it, without spoilers, of course, feel free to drop them in the comments or send them to our email. But please don't spoil, because I genuinely don't know anything about the rest of P5 Royal. Anyway, other than that, did just want to read a comment, and then we'll get to the week's events. Joe, in the comments of last week's episode, say, "Hey, I'm caught up. That means I get to comment. So I'm going to use this momentous occasion to say that Oya doesn't deserve this mud y'all are slinging at her. If one of the criteria for a good confidant is their story's relation to the main games, Oya's might just win this one. Plus, she gets infinite bonus points for being the devil persona hanging out at a bar called Crossroads." And that is a fantastic phrasing.
I never picked up on that.
I had never thought about it.
Never once thought about that connection. I think thank you for pointing that out, Joe, because it's a very good connection.
Yeah.
And I think a totally fair criticism. We sling a lot of mud at Oya, and I maintain that as Oya as a character, and also Oya's abilities that she gives you, I'm not really interested in, but I do agree. Her story is connected kind of to the larger themes and the larger goings-on of the main game, without spoilers, obviously, more than most of the side confidants are, and is also an interesting, good story on its own. So that is, I'll own that. You're right. She doesn't deserve as much mud as we are slinging. but I will continue to sling a little bit of mud.
Just a little. I think there's definitely a Confidant or two I like less, so we'll, we'll sling that mud as we get there. But I just never really explored that Confidant line when I first played, and hopefully, as we go through this week's events, you'll understand that I'm trying.
Aww.
But anyway, I think without.
I tried, and then I was like, nah.
I'm good. Well, I respect that. We'll see. There's going to be more free time in the future. I'm going to need to fill it sometime. And let me tell you, my social stats are getting pretty high, but that's a discussion for this week as we get into our day-to-day and the story that unfolds. And I'm not missing any other housekeeping, right, at this point? I think we've covered it all.
No, I think we're good.
There.
Yeah.
Cool. It's a long holiday weekend, so my brain's all verschmimmeled. But anyway, let's begin the week that was, aka August 30th through September 5th. Or as Tom put it, back to school, thumb twiddling.
Yeah. That's kind of what the week felt like to me, at least.
I get that, yeah.
It just felt like there's occasionally weeks like this in the game where, not saying this was a bad week or anything, and not saying that nothing happened, just like, there are occasionally weeks in the game where they're very clearly are like, trying to line up the calendars a little bit differently than like the last palace ended, and so they're just like, maybe we'll just take a couple days where nothing happens.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay.
It definitely felt like one of those weeks where it's like, we're just kind of being kids, and like that's okay, because again, it's, I think, a fun dichotomy of like, they are still high schoolers, they are teenagers dealing with all their high school stuff in addition to being these omnipotently powerful kids who can go into this metaverse and steal people's hearts. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a quieter week in terms of like main story-wise stuff.
Yeah, there's some stuff to dig into, though.
There is. And one thing I do want to say just at the top of it was like, I genuinely had the thoughts of like, oh man, yeah, it's time to go back to school. Like, I have a thought like that feeling is not something I have felt in many years, but I was like, oh boy, the school year is beginning again.
I live right near a school, and that school went back to school the same week, like this week also, and hey,
yep.
It's happening at the same time around me.
Yeah, I walk Loki through, yeah, that's what I meant to bring up this week. I walk Loki often through there's a medical college, I think, nearby, and we walk through, and there were a bunch of kids like on the quad and like hanging out and gathering, and I'm like, you're not supposed to be here. Oh no, it's time. So yeah, it's fun when it really does reflect what's going on around us. But anyway, let's get into the week, and of course let's begin with August 30th, and let me pull up my more extended notes. But this is, as you were sort of alluding to with your headline for the week, it's a little bit of a quieter one, more down to earth about their day-to-day. This day starts out with the gang meeting at the cafe because, of course, Ryuji hasn't finished his summer homework.
Yeah.
And so everyone's kind of giving him crap for it. He still has to do his work. Sojiro suggests they take a break from it all, but then is like, I got to leave for a bit, so please mind the shop. Which is
This is actually like a really small moment with Sojiro that I think represents a lot, where it's like he's being he's a lot more friendly with them in this moment and being like, lay off Ryuji, okay, I'll be right back, right? And like, I think that represents the shift in the Futaba incident is he's opened up with them suddenly a lot more and is like a lot more comfortable with them and around them. And I really like that, right? Like it is a tangible difference in his attitude from before Futaba's palace.
There are still definitely, I think, a few moments this week where he'll say stuff like, don't get into trouble, or like, hey, I heard about things. But you're totally right. Like, this really does feel like laying the groundwork for how much more of a like sympathetic character he is to the rest of you, which I love because I love Sojiro in this game. But anyway, as he leaves, we get a little bit of a newscast on TV, and there's discussion of a female athlete from school who made the news, and it's Kasumi.
Yeah, this is also like not the first time, but like one of the few times so far that like the party as a whole has discussed Kasumi, where like Joker knows a lot of her story and a lot of what's going on with her already, with her not meeting expectations at meets and stuff. But now you have Makoto kind of like gossiping a little bit, being like, oh yeah, I hear she's not doing so well, and like and everyone kind of being sympathetic for her together.
And they talk about how there's, probably this undue pressure on her. There's one more meet left in the season, so like hopefully she can, bounce back there. And if she does well there, maybe people will lay off her. But then to tie into this, An talks about how she bumped into Mishima before vacation, and he was mad about this underground site for the school, where essentially there were posts related to allegedly that the school was abandoning its honor students that weren't making the school look good. And so they kind of put the pieces together of like, oh, well, if Kasumi's not making the school look good and things continue to not play out well for her, she might kind of be like cast aside by the school, which is a really horrible, pressure for a kid to have to live with.
Right.
But as we know, it's not exactly the best people running the school at the moment.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's also a little bit of evening news where the Phantom Thieves are attracting international attention. Sojiro gets a little tired of it all, and he kind of wants people to stop talking about the Phantom Thieves. But we're getting that sense. As you said, there's not a lot that goes into like what's next for the Phantom Thieves, but it is laying the groundwork of like their importance is continuing to rise up here.
Yeah, the fact that they are now internationally known to some degree, and also like the government has to be like making statements on them is like a really big deal, right?
Yeah.
It is a huge turning point for them, and kind of what they were shooting for of like, we want to be famous, and now they have it.
And what do you do with that fame? Your summer homework. We do get a free evening in here. So before I think we talk about the Morgana at the end of it all, what did you do for your free evening?
This free evening, I maxed out Mishima.
Nice.
So he's done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Mishima's 10, which gets the an ability I really like, because then you just don't have to worry about your party, because everyone in your party, including backup members, all get the same amount of XP. So backup members get XP as if they were in your party, which is great, because it just means you like can just use the people you want to use and not worry about, like, I always am looking at a palace being like, okay, like, who's getting a little too far ahead? I'll mix it up to, like, try to match them, and now it's like, nope, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, no, I've been doing the same, where it's like, oh no, Yusuke fell behind 3 levels, I need to get him in the party for a little bit. Yeah,
right.
That's definitely a concern, so that's a nice power to get. I was stalled out on him because I've been waiting to take a Mementos trip until I had a few more missions, because I think that was like what I was gated with him at, but we'll see how the rest of the week goes. For me this evening, I did another hang with the twins.
Cool.
Because again, I apologize, but it was Oya or anything else, and I didn't choose Oya this night.
And you said you were trying.
This night, I didn't choose Oya. And so anyway, we went to the movies together, and they kept asking me about like the reason humans want to go to the cinema and like what the purpose of it all is and whatnot. And it was very cute. Again, not like consequential in any real way. I just kind of wanted to see what happens if I went again with them.
Yeah, no, they're fun.
And then before the day wraps up, we did get a little bit of Morgana talking about Futaba's mother. And we're getting a little bit of, as you put it in, Morgana's all fired up. Like he's clearly very upset, and this is continuing off the trend we saw last week of like Morgana being a little bit more feeling cast aside and angered by things and the choices the group is making, and really at odds, especially with the nightmare that I don't know if we talked about last time, but the sort of nightmare that Morgana has the night before this.
We mentioned it,
Yeah, but we're really reckoning with their identity and who they might actually end up being. And so that's a thing I feel like we'll continue to touch on this week, so maybe we don't need to jump in too much just yet. But moving on from there, August 31st, we jump into another day with more little bits of story, a little quieter stuff. Futaba and Sojiro are going to go to lunch, and they want to take us with them. How nice, as this little makeshift family comes together. We can't, of course, take Morgana, though.
Yeah.
Which upsets Morgana.
This is one of the few little favorite moments, too, where, like, somebody acknowledges that Morgana is just, like, meowing like crazy, right? Like, Sojiro's like, man, that cat, like...
won't stop.
It's just going.
And then at one point, though, it's really funny, because you're talking to Morgana in this scene where Sojiro and Futaba are just sitting and standing there, and you're just kind of talking to Morgana for a minute or two, and it's like, I know Futaba knows, but, like, does Sojiro understand that you're just talking to your cat? Like, what's happening? Hopefully he's distracted enough to not notice this, because that's very worrying behavior. But the group decides to go out for lunch. Morgana asks to bring some back with a long list of preferred sushi items to bring back. Anyway, we go out to lunch. Again, this is more, I think, a character building moment than anything. Futaba is reminiscing about how she once went, out to sushi with her mom and Sojiro, and likes that this kind of echoes that and hopes that the three of them can do this again because it's a nice moment that brings them all together. Unfortunately, though, it's pretty expensive for Sojiro when he gets the bill.
It's like nuts expensive.
It is, yeah. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. Why did he pick that restaurant? He should have known.
It's like, he says it's like 100,000 yen.
Yeah.
Which is like $1,000.
Yeah.
You spent $1,000 on sushi for 3 people?
You should have known, man.
Like, I know market price can get expensive, but like...
What market are you shopping at?
Yeah, what sushi restaurant did they go to? That's like Jiro prices, man. That's craziness.
It's insane. And what's funny about it, though, is that, like, I couldn't help thinking the whole time I'm just sitting there with, like, 600,000 yen in my pocket, just hanging out. Being like, oh, yeah, real expensive. Oh, no. And I'm like, I could pay for this 6 times over. This is nothing.
Yeah. But, like, and not to say, just to be clear, not to say that sushi restaurants can't be that expensive. It's just not the sushi restaurant that I would expect Sojiro to be bringing 2 kids to.
Right? Yeah, like, he could get by with a little cheaper sushi, and they'd be okay.
Yeah.
Of course, they go home, and they don't have sushi for Morgana. Morgana is very upset about that. And then Futaba ruins it all, because Morgana is reading our texts, and Futaba's like, we even ate the cat's share. Which just further kind of like digs this hole that we're in of Morgana being upset, which is a real bummer.
Yeah.
But
I like this little sushi lunch too, just because what you were saying too. Like it is the makings of them becoming a little family unit in a way that they absolutely were not before. And so it's nice. It's
unfathomable, even like a month ago, that Sojiro would want to spend a meal with you voluntarily like that.
Right. When he didn't even want to put your number in his phone.
Exactly, yeah. So the fact that things are coming together the way they are, I really like it, and I think it further establishes like something we talked about when we began the show, but coming back to the cafe felt like coming home a little bit, and I think this sort of lays the groundwork for why. Anyway, though, to continue with this being a little bit more of a Futaba-centric day, she invites us and we go meet up with her in Akihabara, which is, a very busy, crowded area, and it's, maybe not the easiest place for Futaba to navigate as she's still getting used to being around more people. Security finds her at one point, and she's really not doing great. She's very panicked and nervous as they're trying to ask her questions about, like, who she's here with, does she know where she is, all those sorts of things. Joker comes upon the situation, and the security guard, and you kind of have this, like, standoff moment of, do you really know her, or is this just a creepy dude trying to step in? And thankfully, Futaba and you are able to be like, no, we know each other, and it works out okay. And this properly establishes our confidant bond with Futaba. Much quicker than we ever did with Yusuke.
Yeah, much quicker. And this is a good scene too, to just be like, she did a lot better with the beach stuff, but like that does not mean that she is like she's not gonna like be more comfortable overnight, right? Like this stuff like that takes time, and it takes working at it and kind of building your confidence, and like that's really, I like that it shows that she's not just like magically cured, right? Like they're not doing it like that, and it also shows kind of how much she has a reliance on Joker to be kind of like her safety net in a bit of ways, in a way that is good. I mean, and we can talk about this later, but like that kind of develops in a way I like, in a healthy way, through her confidant line too.
Totally.
Yeah, so I like this little Akihabara scene. I'm also just glad Akihabara is open. I went and explored it the next night, and it's think the last open shopping area you unlock.
At least from the base game, yeah. I don't know if anything else comes up from Royal, but it was the last, I think, as far as I can remember.
I think Kichijoji is the only thing that comes from Royal, I think. Okay. So this might be the last one, so it's finally, like, it's the last kind of layer of, like, the shops that you can only get certain things at and that sort of stuff. So it's a nice little, it's like an exciting gameplay moment, too.
Yeah.
I will also say, though, Sai, for her like, thing for Futaba, this is what I need to know. Are these chronological? Because Sai, her whole thing in this is like, you seem to have a lot of information gathering, which means you probably had a skilled hacker on your team. Who was it? And if it's chronological, it's like, Sai, we just had this whole conversation about Medjed where we told you it was Futaba Sakura. You know this for a fact. Like, you brought it up. What do you mean, who is it? You know?
Who could this be?
Like, come on.
Was it that painter boy? Tell me. Yeah, I wish there was like a really, really dramatized version of their her courtroom interrogations. It would be just such a fun. They're great. They're so on the nose. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But anyway, we form this confidant with Futaba, and then now that essentially opens her up to be able to hang out with her on future days.
Hooray!
We do, of course, have school starting tomorrow, though.
Yes.
Which is, less good news. Morgana didn't enjoy the day we had searching for Futaba.
Oh, poor Morgana. Yeah, Morgana, got left at home, promised sushi, didn't get sushi, dragged to Akihabara, a mess of dealing with Futaba that he didn't want to deal with, and, comes home all sad.
Yeah, it's not a great time for Morgana. But we'll continue to see that as we go along. Anyway, we also learned that Mishima has now made a function where essentially people can send wishes directly for who they want hearts changed, and some added functionality to the website as they become more popular. Their percentage stays over 60% of people being in their corner and whatnot on the daily sort of question. And, things are looking pretty good. We have, of course, the school trip coming up soon. We do have a free night, though. What did you do for this evening?
That evening...
Which is stuck in the cafe, I believe.
Yes, it is in the cafe evening. I hadn't picked up... I, didn't do movie stuff, and currently I think I'm stuck on Sojiro needing 5 kindness. And so I read the, legendary kindness book that you get from Jimbocho so that I could start that up. So I read the first half of it.
Cool. Nice. I brewed coffee.
Hooray!
That was all I did. Because I'm still waiting on that Kawakami, being able to actually talk to her to advance that story as well. And then before the day ends and school begins, we do get another interaction with Igor, and he most importantly increases our persona number, which thank God.
Yeah, so now we're up to 12.
Really, really limited for a while. So yeah, it's nice to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, that continues along, and then we move into a new month, and it is September 1st, the first day of school. And here we go. The school year begins. We get a morning news report. The Prime Minister even addressing the Phantom Thieves at this point in the morning. Again, just talking to their national and international relevance. And we go to school, and we actually get to meet up and talk about things. We know kids are talking about us. We know this Hawaii trip is coming up soon, sort of setting the seeds for things. And the gang is, kind of looking at what their next steps might be. But it's... Again, we have this trip coming up. We have more things going on. And as you pointed to at the beginning, it's kind of just an in-between week where they need the calendar to line up, which is
right.
an interesting time. But I do want to say, I had an interaction with Kawakami that I assume you didn't have.
Hooray! It finally happened!
Yeah,
it finally happened.
Day one was able to have that interaction with Kawakami where she calls me in, gives me the mementos request to continue her quest line.
First day of school. By the way, you remember that thing we did a month ago?
Yeah.
Well,
it was so, as soon as it popped up, I was like, oh, thank God. And then I was also like, this definitely didn't happen for Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. That happened to me 2 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kawakami finally called me in. We'll talk about all that scene and whatnot during when we address her quest line in total. But yeah, thankfully.
So now you have the mementos request for her.
Yes, which will lead to things I did later in the week. But yeah, I finally was able to get that because oh my God, I want the ability to do more things in free time. So anyway, that happened. Let me see where I get to in my notes because I did write some down for that timing. We meet up after school. Yeah, and we're talking about the popularity. We meet up again at the train station, the walkway.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided to meet there, but
And Futaba's just, like, hanging out there.
It's just so funny that they, like, have national recognition and they already got caught by Makoto, and then they're right back in the train station with Ryuji being like, man, what are we going to do next? It's the Phantom Thieves, like, as loud as he possibly can. And it's like, this boy does not learn.
We could be more famous as the Phantom Thieves stealing hearts. What should we do next to steal a heart? People are around. Great. Yeah, it's so weird. But I love it. Anyway, they talk about kind of what to do next, the popularity, the site's ranking, sort of system that's going on there.
It's changing. That you can vote for who you want to have change a heart, and it's like the top one is changing by the second. It's just rapidly adjusting.
Yeah, and they kind of talk about really wanting to focus on whoever this other person in the metaverse is, and the possible culprit for these mental shutdowns. That would be like a major thing to be able to go after. And so they're trying to figure out who that is, but they don't really know yet. And speaking to what we were joking about, though, with Ryuji blabbing too loudly, like, he talks straight up about showing their faces. And we do get a little bit of the dichotomy of the group here. An is kind of for it, but Makoto and Morgana, not so much. It makes sense that Ryuji would be the one who because he just wants a date.
Yeah, this is a trend of Ryuji this week in general, is this idea of, like, him wanting more recognition for what they're doing and just being like, yeah, let's just come out in the public. And the smarter people in the group sort of having to temper him and be like, A, that's not what being, like, Phantom Thieves is about. And also, B, no, like, the cops are looking for us, right?
We're kids, dude.
Yeah, so...
we have homework to do. We can't deal with this.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to us? Are we going to get called in by some investigator who's going to interrogate us for hours, asking us about every team member? We can't deal with that pressure.
Seems unlikely.
Anyway, we do eventually kind of circle around to the idea that Sai could have some useful info for us.
Because they basically just don't have any leads is the thing. They just, don't know they don't have another target. They don't know what to look for in terms of this other person in the metaverse. So Sai investigating them is kind of the only thing they can land on.
And Futaba, of course, suggests, well, if I could hack into something, that would be pretty easy to get us some information. And so we sort of land on this idea that, okay, Makoto could maybe help get some info from Sai in some fashion. And so she agrees to steal some info off of her laptop, but we'll get to that in a little bit. We do get a call with the principal, talking about how things are in tabloid magazines. It's just generally going badly for this horrible man.
Yeah. The call basically sounds like him realizing how terrible stuff is going, and whoever he's talking to, who he's calling sir and is in charge of him in some capacity, realizing how terrible stuff is going for him and chewing him out and spitting him out, basically chewing up and spitting him out. And
yeah, he was kind of laying the track as he went along. His master plan to do things wasn't going too well, and now it feels like he's out of track to lay, and it's kind of coming up to meet him. But we'll see where that goes. But for now, we do have a free evening. So what did you do, Tom?
That evening, I explored Akihabara. So I ran around I went to the game store that's there to buy all of the video games that you can get. So now I have 5 video games to play if I ever need to. The Morgana does this thing that's just really weird in LeBlanc when you get your free time, where he's like, oh, don't forget there's a secondhand store you could check out. And then, I don't know if you did this, but you can go to the secondhand store in, oh my goodness, I'm blanking, Young and Jaya, and that's where you can get the broken laptop, which we talked about previously.
At some point this week, get that broken computer, yeah.
Yeah, so I bought the broken laptop, and then you gotta go to Akihabara and buy the laptop repair kit. And then you go to your desk, and this is what I did this evening, which is fix the laptop.
Okay.
So now the laptop is fixed, and I have access to the Shady Commodities website,
which I think I've talked about on the show. I had no idea existed.
Yeah.
Up until...
So I'll let you find out what that stuff is, but it is it's a semi-useful, semi-pointless sort of thing. It's just another little way to buy stuff that is useful.
I think I bought both aspects because I did go to Akihabara at some point this week. I think I bought both things but didn't know what to do with them. So
Right.
Good to know. I'll go to the desk at some point soon.
And it does take an evening's worth of time.
Cool. Good to know. For my evening, I went to Booktown to swap the first book and get some of the newer books that are there. And then I hung out with Oya.
Oh!
I spent some of my free time with Oya.
Wow.
So, I did that for the people. I hope you're happy, Joe. I hung out with Oya.
It's for the people.
Yep. Oya for the people. But no, it was fun. Like, it was entertaining. I do like the conversations with her because she is just essentially this journalist trying to ply a kid with free alcohol that she can't give him, that Lala-chan keeps preventing Joker from having. And it's a fun sort of back and forth. But yeah, it's such an early part of the chain that it didn't really lead to anything like crazy. But yeah, so that was my free evening. And then I think we can move on to September 2nd. We have a run-in with Akechi at the train. I didn't write down any of like the dialogue, so I don't know if there was anything really important from this convo, but
I don't think there's anything like critical. I think mainly it's just him once again being like, people really hate me right now. Like, it's just kind of him being bummed.
That's kind of how I took it.
And also still like having a nice little cordial conversation with Joker.
But we show up to school, Ryuji's in front of school, and we have a discussion. There's just this student watering flowers behind us, who Ryuji, we kind of run into this girl, and naturally, Ryuji gets the host for her, because she is a girl. I feel like that's just what happens to Ryuji.
Yeah.
Sees girl. He gets the, like, cartoon, old, like, Hanna-Barbera awooga eyes, and then...
I mean, I'm not going to say it's not accurate to... like teenage boys, but
it's definitely accurate. Yeah. I mean, especially as a dude who like went to an all guys school,
right?
It was a rare thing to see a girl in my days. So I mean, it's a little different for Ryuji, but
this is the other thing I was talking about too, where he's like, man, I wish I could tell girls I was a Phantom Thief because then I'd get so many girls.
Oh my god, yeah, it's such is the plight of our poor sweet boy Ryuji. But anyway, that's basically what happens with that interaction, but it is worth noting they ran into this student who we have of course seen before. Later on we do get Makoto talking to Kawakami about the fact of the school trip coming up. Unfortunately, because of things going on with people investigating the school and whatnot, the teachers who are going to be going need to kind of stay behind and can't go to Hawaii, so they need some of the third years to go on the second year's trip to Hawaii. And so Makoto has to take a trip to Hawaii with the rest of the gang. Oh no.
This is also like a wildly irresponsible thing to me in that the teachers are basically being like, okay, we just won't send chaperones. We'll just send students who are 1 year older than you to go with you and chaperone you.
Yeah.
And then also this is wildly irresponsible because you're literally telling a high schooler, hey, it's Friday. 4 days from now, you're going to another country.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Pack, make sure you got everything you need. Uproot any plans you had. You're it's not a bad trip.
And it's not asking.
No.
It's not asking. It's like, this is a thing you have to do. It's like, whoa.
School responsibilities are nuts, man.
Yeah.
It's a funny conversation to have, but essentially now we know more of the group will be able to go now to Hawaii, which is great.
And there's also this moment, I guess we should mention too, in this morning of like, there's the tabloid report that the principal was talking about actually comes out, and everyone's talking about how there's like, the school knew about all the terrible stuff and was covering it up, and like, Kawakami gets confronted by a student being like, did you know? And she's like, no, I didn't know. And like, so that's all now happening.
I do like that the fallout of things we did, 50 plus hours ago, though, are still reverberating through all this. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
That after everything he did, we would still be getting fallout at this school from, everything horrible that occurred.
Totally. I agree. Yeah, it didn't just go away. It it continues to have ramifications on the school.
And like, there is a version of this where I could easily see them kind of pushing that to the background and not being important, but the fact that it does keep coming back, I really appreciate that. Anyway, as you said, we have that discussion with Kawakami in the class as well. Some kids are talking about all the problems plaguing the school. She does also mention Maruki is back for people who need any therapy. She's basically like, hey, if you want to talk about this, go to the counselor. I don't have time for this. You go do that.
Yeah.
But I'm still at a point where I can't go back to him.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, just checking.
I think I do think this is good because it is still good to get it out of the way early.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to miss it. But I believe we are both still gated by just like at a future point in time, it will open back up for us.
Cool. Okay. That makes sense. But yeah, if you haven't already and you're playing along with us at home, go hang out with Maruki. Anyway, from there, we do have more of an actual free day. So, Tom, what did you do?
Yeah, so during this day, what did I do? Oh, yeah, so I leveled Futaba.
I did the same.
Yeah, got Futaba to level 2, which is, I'm very excited to be able to start doing Confidant stuff with her. The level 2 is just going lightly into it, right? Is when she makes this promise list of like, I want to do these things, like go into a crowd and, you know, go visit high school. And she's basically like very much trying to push herself in a way that's very kind of inspiring to see, of her being like, I want to start building up to this, potentially go back to high school one day, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, I actually leveled Oya.
Look at us.
I regretted it immediately, but I did it. I literally was like, well, she's the only option tonight, so I might as well just finally get her to level 2. And then I clicked it, and I went into it, and then I was like, oh, wait, I could have played billiards. Like, immediately I was like, dang. I
played billiards. I had that same interaction. I'm sorry, Joe, and all the Oya stands out there. We really aren't meaning to do it this way. It's also like,
I'm excited to get through Oya's Confidant line later. Right?
Yeah.
I'm happy to be going through that Confidant line. It is just not at all what I want to prioritize right now.
Yeah.
And if you want to prioritize it, that's totally fine because it is a good story, and I agree with Joe. And we'll calm down on the hating, I promise. But
it really is a time.
It's not what I want to be doing right now.
Yeah. It is not what interests me about any of the world at the moment.
Right.
And
it does get interesting. I will agree there.
I'm excited to eventually see it. I feel like I'll have the time to at this point, but yeah. We'll see. Anyway, so yeah, I did play billiards that night. And that kind of wrapped up the evening very quickly for me because I hung out with Futaba during the day as well. So before the day ends, more importantly, story-wise, we do get a scene of Makoto talking to Sai and her, you know, going in to steal the data from her laptop. So we have this funny, like, Sai is in the bathroom dealing with a bath, and Makoto's like, it's going up, the percent, like it's slowly tracking along, and oh no, it's not there yet. Oh, I hope it can do it in time. And she like tries to distract her by like, oh yeah, please put the bath salts in there. Thank you. It's just like the weakest of things, but it works. And we do end up stealing the data.
I also love, I love that Futaba gives her, just for lack of a non-Spider-Verse term, a goober, right? That's just like a USB stick that you just plug into the laptop and it bypasses all security and instantly clones the entire computer's hard drive. And it's like, great, cool, don't ask questions.
Yep.
There's also a really nice little detail. This is a tiny detail, but I wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
The dialogue when she's watching that loading bar go, if you just don't autoplay the dialogue, right? If you just like wait, it goes up percentage-wise points by like the line of conversation you're on.
Oh.
So like if you just like wait a bit, it'll stop. And then as soon as you hit onto the next conversation line, it continues to fill a little bit till the next point, which I think is like a funny little, like it's kind of an unnecessary detail to put in. Like you could just frame that shot to just not have the computer screen in it, or whatever. But like I really like that. It's just a nice touch.
They did animate it to the actual like time of things progressing, which I appreciate.
They did.
That's sweet. I do also like that it doesn't mean you can just sit there and let it build up. And then it would just
it would be silly.
I appreciate that. So anyway, we do successfully steal the data.
Hooray.
And we'll have that at our disposal in the future. But for now, we move on to September 3rd, where we talk about, you know, we have this data. It's going to take some time to unpack, essentially. the numbers need to do their thing and the data needs to be unfurled, and I don't know how computers work that way. So anyway, the gang is meeting though in Futaba's room. They're kind of talking about that as well as their future trips. Yusuke is actually going to LA while we go to Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah, this is part of the thing of like, it's so easy to think that all of them travel together because they're just one group. But so Joker, Ryuji, and On are second years, so they're going on this trip. Futaba isn't in school, so she's staying behind. Morgana can't come because Morgana's a cat. Makoto wasn't going to come because she's a third year, but now is chaperoning, and Yusuke goes to a different school, so was not going to go on the trip, but ended up going on the trip to LA at the same time. Yeah. And like, this was something I guess I didn't process the first time I played, where I was just like, oh yeah, they're all like, kind of like, they're not all just one unit all the time.
Yeah, which I appreciate. Like, I like the idea that they're not all just in the same like homeroom class and spending 24/7. There are these, roadblocks to them being together, which I appreciate. Anyway,
Hawaii trip.
Yes, we'll get there
excited.
soon. But
I'm excited. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun.
Oh no, don't be. You don't need to apologize. I'm very excited as well. But we do finally, get into the data, and it seems to confirm this idea that the cases kind of at large are more linked.
Right.
What we've been looking into.
Or at least that's what Sai thinks.
Yes.
Thinks, yeah.
So on their end, they think, the stuff with the mental shutdowns and everything else. And of course, this ties into things with Futaba's mother's research and things of that nature, because that was something... It peels back the layers that this is something that existed before we gained access to the metaverse. Like, there are known other parties now investigating this stuff to a wider degree. Excuse me one sec. Really had to clear my throat. Anyway, we do then get a rest of the day in the evening. Excuse me. We get the rest of the evening to hang out. What did you do?
That evening, leveled a Akechi. Does that thumbs up while you're drinking water mean you too?
I did too. We're totally dating. Yeah. Oh my god, we are so dating.
This is the moment where Akechi, rather than being just like hanging out in Kichijoji or whatever, is actually at LeBlanc drinking coffee in your book reading chair.
I was so surprised. I loved it.
Yeah. It's like a really cool, weird, unexpected thing. And then you say, hey, do you want to hang out? And this is, I believe, getting him from 5 to 6. I think. And Sojiro's there and is just like, hey, you guys should go take a bath. Because that's a thing that you can do. It's across the street. So you go take a bath with Akechi and talk about his family and talk about how you're not so different after all. And it's like, a great conversation and scene, and we can get into this more with his story recap or whatever, but also B, just like such a date. You're so dating. You're 100% dating.
Yep. Yeah, we've gone to a jazz club. We've gone and taken a bath together. We see eye to eye on all these things, and even when we disagree, we still get along. We're both like intellectually, going back and forth. We are so linked. It is incredible how much we are.
So a thing I wanted to say, and this is not, I've talked about this before, but it's semi-spoilery, but I'm not going to go into any specifics. Mm-hmm. We are approaching the point where to reach the quote-unquote true ending, whatever that, it's not as like gatekeepy as like missing royal content entirely, but it is sort of special that there are certain specific dialogue choices that need to be made in some of Akechi's Confidant level up scenes. I won't spoil that for which people want. I think it might start at the rank 8 one, not the rank 7 one, but I wanted to get ahead of this. So just be aware of that. If you are interested in making sure you don't miss that stuff, try to look up a guide of which exact dialogue things. It's not many, and honestly, missing them isn't like the end of the world by any means. You'll still be able to watch the show. You'll still be able to follow along perfectly. It's just that it'll have some little ramifications there. So this is just putting that out there one more time. Keep doing Akechi, and if you're really, really concerned about that stuff, maybe look up, just all you need to know is just look up which is like the best dialogue choices to pick for him. And it's something I usually don't even do, but if you're concerned, that's on the table.
It's good to know, and I'm not even going to dwell on the fact that after we talked about dating Akechi, you mentioned that we should keep doing Akechi. Anyway. That is both how we spent our free evening.
There's literally a moment in that scene where you're like, maybe this isn't a conversation we should have naked.
Yeah. It gets really, it gets really sad for a bit. But yeah, we'll talk about that more as we finish that plot line, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go through the rest of the week, which is more free time. September 4th, what did you do?
September 4th, yeah. So these last 2 days of this week are just like no plot, right? Yeah. They're just complete free time, which is unexpected. I guess you also do get a call or you get a text from Hifumi, I think, at one point during this week, where she says, hey, I'm going to be on a school trip to LA because she goes to the same school as Yusuke.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And she's like, I'm not going to be available to hang out. And I think Kasumi does the same, where she texts you and is like, hey, I'm going to be away at a country training, so we can't train. Yeah. And then you're like, I'm going to be out anyway. And she's like, great. So everybody's sort of like going away right now. But beyond that, you don't get any plot scenes. So the first day on September 4th, I leveled Takemi to 9.
Damn.
So
nice.
I'm 1 away from maxing her out. And then in the evening, I leveled EY to, I think, 3 or 4. I think 4.
Cool. I don't know. I somehow lost... I could have sworn I wrote this down, but I didn't. But at some point during this week, my proficiency got to max level, I think. Unless that happened last week. And then something else got to max rank, but I can't remember what. So I'll update on next week. But I could have sworn that happened. It might. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think it was either. I think it might have been. I'm trying to like visualize the star. I think it's kindness.
Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure.
So here's what I will say, and this is not to throw shade in any way, because you did max these out way quicker than me, and it's very impressive because I'm nowhere near kindness or proficiency at 5. But the unfortunate side effect of this for you is now you're going to have a lot of wasted points.
Yeah.
Right?
I know.
Every time you would be getting proficiency from something, or you would like read those Jinbocho books, it's now like it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Which is weird because like I didn't really prioritize them this time around. Like I've just kind of been doing things how I wanted to be doing them, and it worked out.
Good.
And so,
yeah,
like,
that's great.
I'm not too worried, but no, I totally had that thought with you. I'm like, there's not an insignificant amount of the game left.
Yeah.
And at this point, the social stats are just not going to be too much of a worry. Like the others, I still have to get up, but they're just not going to be as big a concern.
And it's a double-edged sword, right, in that regard, right? Because, yeah, it means that occasionally you're going to get sort of like unexpected proficiency points that are wasted. But at the same time, it means that you never have to worry about trying to go out of your way to level proficiency again.
Exactly.
Which is like, so it's a trade-off, I think. But it's also just it's crazy impressive how quickly you got those stats up.
I can't believe it because I remember it being such a struggle for me last time. So I'm happy. I'm trying to focus on the positive of it. But
yeah, totally. You should.
Anyway, for my day, I went to Mementos because I built up like 5 or so things to investigate and do in there, and yeah, I gained like 300,000 yen or whatever by the end of it all. It was wonderful.
Because never have to worry about money again.
I thankfully ran into Jose twice naturally. Like I didn't even have to try to game the system like we had been talking about last week. And so I ran into him at like 2 really opportune points to get up my items, XP, and money. So like I'm getting 4 items per everything. My XP is at 120% or whatever. My money is at 130. Like it was just going and going, and so many of the weaker enemies, because I still had some older tasks to do, it was just constantly run into a person, get everything, run into a person, get everything, and it was just such a like satisfying, again, kind of simple, but it was just so satisfying to keep doing that over and over.
Yeah, they made the like animation and the sound effects and the reward kind of that goes along with the Ryuji insta-kill as Morgana car like really satisfying.
Oh, yeah.
And so even though it is, as you said, it's not a complex combat system, it is a very satisfying grind separate from that.
Yeah. It definitely turned it into a great podcast day for me.
Sure.
Which then inspired my real life evening events, because I was listening to a podcast about Star Wars, and then I was like, we should watch Star Wars. So we watched Return of the Jedi. But anyway, and then in the evening, I read the kindness book from the Booktown store.
Cool.
Do you just have to read all of the next level of books? Is that how that works?
I think you have to read all 4 of them, and then
Okay.
you go back, and they give you one final book.
Okay, cool. That works for me.
Yeah.
And then, September 5th, what did you do?
So I leveled Futaba, so she's now 3.
Me too.
And oh, good. So yeah, this is just to not to spoil, but this is the moment in Futaba's story that I was alluding to earlier, and we'll get into her story deeper later. But this is a moment where she realizes that she feels more comfortable with you, and she's kind of nervous on her own. And for me, this is a really important moment in Futaba's kind of development and her confidant line, and one I'd like to talk about now, just because it's a moment where she could kind of get obsessive and instead be like, okay, I only feel more comfortable when I'm around you, so I want to be around you all the time. And instead what she does is something that's incredibly healthy and kind of heads up, where she's like, okay, I only feel comfortable when I'm around you outside, so I need to figure out a way to make it so that I can be comfortable without you as well. And like, that's super, super mature of her.
Yep.
To be like, all right, this is good, thank you for helping me, but also I should eventually figure out how to not rely on you entirely, is like crazy mature of her. And it's one of the reasons I think she is it's just another indication of how smart and good of a character she is.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's also a really great healthy choice in that way that you were saying, that like it's not reinforcing any sort of negative stereotype of someone who has gone through what she has and has, receded away from being in society too much. It shows, as I think you've said, she actively wants to put herself out there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't
and
a byproduct.
acknowledges that it's going to be hard and that it's
Yes.
going to take time, but also just like that this is what she wants.
Yeah, totally. It's a really great example of that for this character. And yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a really great moment with her.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hung out with her during the afternoon too. Did you go
Cool.
through your evening?
Yeah. Oh no. So my evening was another evening of is the only one, and this time I went, I'm gonna go play billiards. So I now have the technical rank. Basically, I think you have to have like read the book for the billiards thing. You got to buy the billiards cue, and then you got to do billiards like 3 times, I think it is, to like max out the technical rank that you get. And then that's like makes your technicals super, super, super good.
Cool. I ended up going to, I don't think I wrote down my evening, so I will double check that for next week. But I did also spend a lot of time today doing the fusion calculations needed to at least do a couple levels for the twins.
Gotcha.
And
Nice.
give them the personas, they need. So it took a lot of like dumping some personas out of my team, buying some new ones, upgrading some others, doing like, I did some other like group fusions and things like that. But I was doing a lot of that, the persona math to get, I think I got through 2 or 3 of them. So
Yeah, it's a little bit of a dance.
yeah. And I don't know if I have what I need for the next one, but I think I was gated by just having not found some personas I needed. But
Fun fact, if you haven't, if you don't really want to use a fusion calculator, one way that can help that's really nice is if you go into the like register, you can sort, I think this is a Persona 5 Royal Edition, I don't entirely know. You can press a button so that instead of viewing the personas by their name that you can summon, right, directly, you view them by what they itemize into. And so you can say, if, okay, I need this persona and I have this persona, but I don't know how to give it this ability that it needs, you can go through your register by itemizing and just say, oh, there's a card for that exact thing. So instead what I can do is summon this persona, itemize it, and then just put the card on that guy.
Yeah.
And that is a nice way to get nice way to get around it a little bit if you don't want to use some fusion calculator or whatever, or you just are like, I have this persona, but I don't know how to give it X ability.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good thought. I will definitely check in for that more because, like I said, I only did a couple, but I would like to keep that up as much as possible as we go.
Dude, the Velvet Room is tiring, though. You can only do a couple at a time.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's just so dramatic and a lot of menu switching that I think after a while I'm like, yeah, I could bounce out of here for now.
Yeah.
But that otherwise wraps up our events for this week. As you had mentioned, much quieter of a week when it comes to the overarching story, but we will get to more things in time, and it gave us, I think, most importantly, a little bit more of a bonding moment for the Sojiro Futaba Joker family that is forming, and sadly a little bit more strife for Morgana.
Yeah.
And
then next week we go to Hawaii.
Not a bad way to spice things up. And
it's gonna be a short week next week.
Yeah, a little bit, but hey, more time to dig into some topics. I do think, given sort of where we're at timing wise, we'll continue to save. Apologies to Kasumi, but we'll continue to save jumping into that Confidant.
It's gonna be a running joke every week. It's gonna be what's that stand up? That's saying, like, apologies to, what's his name?
It's Jimmy Kimmel with Matt Damon.
Yeah. Apologies to Matt Damon. We didn't have time.
Didn't have time for Kasumi.
Every time with Kasumi.
We'll invite you back next week, Kasumi, for another story. But for now, why don't we jump into wrapping up, including our quizzes and questions for the week. I will begin with a Persona pseudonym. While we're waiting for a new palace, I think I'm pulling from mementos as best I can without doubling up. So apologies if anything does feel like it doubles up at some point.
I'm gonna be nervous about this one.
But this one, it is one I know I encountered, so I think theoretically you should have been able to encounter it as well. But this is the Hunting Wolf Spirit.
Huh. Hunting Wolf Spirit. It's not that one, because that one we already did.
What one?
Oribus is the dog, but it's the two-headed dog. And I think we already asked that as a question.
It is not Oribus. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of wolves.
It is of the Temperance Arcana, if that helps.
That doesn't help. That doesn't help at all.
It is found in areas 6 and 7 of the Path of Chemda. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's much more specific. Thank you. No. I think I'm. Give me like 5 more seconds. Let me just. I'm like racking my brain for if I know of any wolf personas.
I will say it is not to give you a little bit of help there. Spirit is also important. It is not just a standard kind of like wolf hanging out there. There is a little bit more of a spiritness to it, if that helps.
No, I'm throwing in the towel. I don't got this one.
Fair enough. It is the Temperance Arcana, known as Makami.
Makami?
Yeah, it's this like long, thin, kind of like paper wolf.
It's the dog. Yeah, it's the paper wolf. Yeah. There's a couple of those. There's a couple of the like, I think the other one is called like Inugami. Yeah. Makami is the one that's thin like paper.
Yeah,
and then
they're super
Inugami
thin.
is the one that's long but like round. I think is the way that it works.
I think you're correct there. I have them up here. They are known as, maybe I'll save that just in case, but yeah, they are more rounded.
Yeah. Oh, man, I knew that guy too. Okay.
What? Perhaps for next week, we'll see. But thank you for playing along as always, Tom. But before we
good one. That was a good pull. Good pull.
I encountered them so many times, so it just popped in for my head. But of course, we also have a pop quiz question for you to wrap up this week. So what do you have for us?
This one is like kind of a weird one, but was very specifically pulled from a conversation that you can overhear and actually are forced to. It's not a side thing. Everyone has heard this one. It's just a matter of if you paid attention. And maybe you can go find it next week or something. Maybe. I don't actually know if I've ever heard this outside of this one moment in the game, so it's just why I pulled this one. Akihabara opens up which people who've played the game before knows that leads to a certain confidant that you'll get there, related to a game called Gunabout, which is the arcade game. Additionally, this week we got a Mementos request that was, hey, there's a cheater in this game, Gunabout, this arcade game, right? And you need to go stop this, find out his name at the arcade in Shibuya, and then stop him in Mementos or whatever. Which is something I did. I got the Mementos request. I just didn't go in and do it. Gunabout is only part of the game's name. What is the full name of Gunabout?
I don't know if I know.
Just as a little further hint, it is Gunabout is like the main name, and then it's colon and a subtitle.
Okay.
So that's the question for next week, is what is the full name of popular shooting arcade game Gunabout?
Interesting. Yeah, I can't remember it. But if you remember it, you can please leave it in the comments on YouTube of this week's episode, or you can write in to doorknowledge@gmail.com with your answer, any other questions and comments and such you want to give about the show. But that is going to pretty much wrap us up for this week's episode. Again, if you want to write in, doorknowledge@gmail.com. You can find the video version of this show and the entire show on YouTube. Search for Doorknowledge or, this podcast, and it should show up for you. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get new episodes as they appear every Monday. And also subscribe, like, comment. If you enjoy the show, please leave a 5-star review if you're using Apple Podcasts. Genuinely, it helps out the show a lot, so please consider doing so if you're enjoying it. But either way, thank you to everyone out there who is listening and watching the show. We have so much fun, more story to get into as the weeks go on. It's going to be a lot of fun to dig into the latter half of this game. But otherwise, you can find Tom and me on Twitter. I'm at @Dornbush, and Tom is at Tom R. Marks. Tom, I think that covers it all, but thank you once again for joining me for this week's episode.
Always a pleasure.
And even though he's getting a bit angry, Morgana is telling us it's time to go to bed. So with that, it's been a wonderful, wonderful episode, as always. And thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see y'all next week, and as always, nice to steal you.